Hey guys, Sleepy Reader here on my lunch break. Last night I read 3 issues of Stumptown. Some people were asking me how this was when they saw it in my little haul video. And I was very curious myself. And this is kind of a review of Stumptown from Stumptown. Although, actually at the moment I'm in the suburbs of Stumptown. But I live in Portland, and in the inner city of Portland, and I've lived in the inner city of Portland for 23 years. Stumptown is one of the nicknames of Portland. The economy of the city, until recently, was built on the timber industry, and so they nicknamed it Stumptown. And it's possible at some point it was surrounded by tree stumps. I don't know. Other nicknames are City of Roses, and there's another common nickname, and now I'm forgetting it. But if you lived in Portland, you'd see the name Stumptown all around town. Businesses named, Stumptown Coffee and all that kind of thing. And I believe that Greg Rucka either currently lives in Portland or has lived here. And I don't know about the artist Matt Southworth. But the artist definitely has studied up on Portland. I recognize every single scene in the book. This stage at the Crystal Ballroom is exactly what that stage looks like in the Crystal Ballroom. That's pretty much what the outside of the Crystal Ballroom looks like. The hero, who's a private eye, apparently has her office in the Amtrak train building, which, that's one thing I don't know for sure whether that building is still an active train station, whether it has offices up above. Quite possible. But, everything is very accurate visually to what Portland, Oregon, Stumptown looks like, down to the style of houses on the inside and the out. This living room where people are getting mugged or beaten up, like even the style of the windows in the living room looks a lot like the windows in my house. So it's kind of a weird thing to read this comic. I don't know if I've ever read a comic book that is about a place where I lived, or at least visually really looked like a place where I lived. So to me that was a whole lot of fun reading Stumptown. So certainly for people who've been to Portland or live in Portland, this comic has that kind of novelty value to it. Otherwise, I would say that what would affect whether you like Stumptown, the comic book Stumptown, or not, is if you like private eye stories. Greg Rucka has little essays about private eye stories at the back of each issue, and he references the Rockford Files, for instance. And once you think Rockford Files, then you kind of understand a little more of who the hero, the PI in this, whose name is Dex. That's not her full name, but she's a veteran of Desert Storm, I think, or whatever they call the more recent invasion of Baghdad. But kind of your laconic loner PI who gets involved in things. But I have to say, for me, I'm not the world's biggest private eye fan. I really love the Marlowe novels by Raymond Chandler, and I've tried lots of PI books. I enjoyed the comedic Fletch books and that kind of thing, but I'm not someone who can gobble up hundreds of mystery novels or private eye stories. And so on that level, I found the story interesting enough, but I was glad I had paid a very small amount for these issues. On the plus side, the art is very accurate to Portland. It's also just very cool art very nicely colored. If you like this kind of looser and at the same time more realistic art style, it's definitely something to check out. And the maybe all of the Oni comics are like this. The paper quality and the covers, it's a very nice package. And also balancing out my slightly meh response to the story is that I am missing issue 3. So, and this turns out to be a 4-issue story. So I think, and the final issue is more of the big chase at the end. So all of the reveals must have happened in issue 3. So my reviewing of that, I don't even like to call these things reviews. My thoughts on that are incomplete. If I see the 3rd issue, I think I would grab it to get the rest of the story. And Rucka himself says that really this story is about Stumptown, which is why he's named it Stumptown. And Stumptown isn't the real Portland, he says, but an idea of Portland. But I think that, to me, there, Rucka's kind of fallen down. He kind of maybe relies on a few things he's noticed about Portland, a few little touchstones, like there's often been, and I don't know if there currently is, because for maybe the past 8 years I've been kind of going out to see music and stuff, but there's often been a very sort of intense local music scene, and it always has a slightly, even the most well-known people from here have a more alternative kind of vibe, I guess. Like, and these are bands that really started in Washington State or Idaho and then moved to Portland, but we've had bands like Built to Spill and Sleater Kinney, and bands like that are like the big bands that live locally in Portland, or the Dandy Warhols. They are a truly native Portland band. So I think that's the kind of band. I'm sorry, I should have said this is a mystery revolving around a missing guitar owned by a member of a rock and roll band who lives in Stumptown. That's their hometown. And somehow ends up involving with meth dealers and the DEA and that kind of thing, where one part of the mystery leads to another. So I feel like the mechanics of the mystery are handled fine, but I don't care a whole lot about the characters. They're just, if you accept that the woman Private Eye is kind of your stand-in for Rockford Files, and you kind of accept some cliches about kind of hip alternative people who become rock stars, you can sort of fill in the blanks for the rock and roll characters, and then you've got these bald guys who never wear shirts, who are hyped up on meth, who are the meth guys. And for the city of Portland, you have a lot of Portland scenery. But like in one of Rucka's essays, he talks about how it's really about the town and everything. But I didn't, and maybe it would be different if I weren't from Portland, but I didn't feel like I learned anything special about my town or a fictionalized version of my town. Just the general feeling that they're kind of hipsters in town. And also there, I felt like the writer took the easy way out and made the members of the band super successful. They've sold millions of albums. And right now, I don't think that many groups even sell millions of albums. And on top of that, they would have been more interesting if they were a little more local. There's a lot of bands, even like Sleater Kinney and stuff, who are, critically reviewed and have sold hundreds of thousands of albums. They're quite successful, but they're not superstars. And that's really more, to me, that would have been a more interesting way to explore the Portland vibe. You guys may have seen Portlandia, and in its kind of absurd way, it's much closer to looking at the core of what might be going on in Portland. Has one of the drummer or the guitarist from Sleater-Kinney in it. So in its Saturday Night Live way, it's much, to me, from what I've experienced at Portland, much closer. And I haven't been in a band, but, back in the 90s and early 2000s, half my friends were in bands. And, I've had near rubbing shoulders experiences with people in very successful bands, or, with their immediate siblings and things like that. So the owner of the video store that I go to around the corner from my house was in a moderately successful grunge band back in the 90s. And he still plays bass with, what's that guy's name? The guy who does Guided by Voices. He goes on tour with the Guided by Voices guy. And then he comes back and runs the video store around the corner from my house. There's a much more interesting Portland character. I wish, Greg Rucka knew that guy and had based some of his characters on him. So there you are. It's a decent Private Eye story, but I'm not crazy about Private Eye stories. And it being my own town, and I've known the character of my own town for 23 years, explored it quite thoroughly. I didn't get excited by that. So, I haven't read a lot of Greg Rucka. I jumped onto, oh boy, there's already moisture on the back of these covers. Yikes, I don't know where that came from. That's what I get for not keeping them in the plastic bags at all times. I haven't read much Greg Rucka. I jumped on to Punisher when everyone else talked about how great it was, and it was great, and I read the whole run, and really liked it. And I wonder from that experience, and the fact that before I even knew Greg Rucka wrote comic books, I read 2 of his mystery novels, and found them a little bland also. Again, I don't know why I've read so many mystery novels, because I don't usually like them. But every now and then there's a really good one. But they're just laying around everywhere, I guess. And I used to do a lot of, this is really rambly, but I used to listen to a lot of audiobooks. And at the library I'd always find tons of mystery novels on audiobooks. So I would just get the ones with narrators that I liked, and that must be how I first discovered Greg Rucka. So then later when I saw that he was writing comic books, I just assumed they would be equally bland, and I never tried Greg Rucka comics. But from what I hear, they're really good, and I've been meaning to go back and read his run on Batwoman. And anyhow, so I wonder if he's better with already established characters. Or maybe people who aren't from Portland won't have this problem with this particular book. What was I going to say? One more thing about that. And I'm really excited to check out his science fiction comic that has just come out called, you guys are all reviewing it, and now I'm forgetting the name. It'll come to me, Lazarus. That sounds really cool, so I hope that's good. And I'm, where there are some people, like my father-in-law, who will read any mystery and enjoy it, I'll probably read any science fiction book and find something to enjoy in it. So, mysteries and Private Eye stories are a harder sell for me. So I hope that helps people. I've gone on, I can't believe it, for 14 minutes just talking about these 3 comics. Didn't even talk about the comics much detail. And another thing that you can't tell from this must be the second Stumptown series, I believe, from things I was seeing elsewhere in his essays. I think there already was another Stumptown series. So maybe this is really issues 1 through 4 of The Case of the Baby in the Velvet Case, which is kind of a clever title. So I might also, either from my library, or if I find them cheaply, I might try to read the first series of Stumptown books, Stumptown comics, if I'm right that this is the second, because those might be stronger and they might establish the character better. So I'm intrigued enough, especially because of the great artwork. So there's a rambling, possibly useless for most people, thoughts on Stumptown by Greg Rucka and Matthew Southworth. And I guess colors, which should be mentioned by Rico Renzi. Rico Renzi with Matthew Southworth did the colors. Another thing to note is, while I love the art in the first two issues, and then I missed the third issue, in the fourth issue, the art kind of breaks the normal, like many of the pages you have to read this way. And sometimes, if I can find it, the panels kind of start moving around and you have to turn the page this way and that. And I'm not finding it. And the artwork looks slightly different in this last issue. I don't know if the artist was trying something different or if he was more rushed. It feels like maybe the colors, or maybe the colors have changed, but the colors are filling in more. There's some cool effects, like this car driving here, and then you see the speedometer there, a very old-fashioned speedometer. But that's my ramble. Hope you guys are all doing well. You're victim to the fact that I have this iPad with me, so I can do a video anywhere. Talk to you later.